On August 25th, Norman residents will have the opportunity to vote on 4 general obligation bonds that will help fund vital services and improvements to our city. Proposition 3 will provide $24.3 million for municipal services facilities to better serve the residents of Norman. One of the projects included in this bond is renovations to the Norman Police Department.
All right, so welcome to the police department. My name is Brent Barbour. I'm a captain here with the Norman Police Department. This is our building. It's our main headquarters. It was built in 1982 and has served us ever since then. It is a joint structure that we share with the municipal court and with our communications division, both of which we'll see here in a little while. The facility is open 24/7. It's visited by a lot of people every day, and is truly one of our greatest benefits and abilities to contact the public. We all think about the police department as being the officers out on the street, responding to calls, responding to crashes, helping people out in domestics and things of that nature. But there's a lot of activities that occur here, not only for our officers, but for our civilian staff that support everything we do out in the field every day. One of the big issues that we have in our building starts right out here before we even get in. Beyond just the parking aspect of finding a place to put your vehicle is the concern of getting somebody with mobility issues into our building. We have one mobility accessible ramp, basically for wheelchairs or people in walkers, and that is not the best design, but it is a struggle for some people to gain access to us. All of our other entrances and exits in the building are greeted by stairs or steps or other obstacles. So in the event of an emergency, of course, we have people here 24/7. We will get them out. We can get them down those obstacles and out. So it's not necessarily an unsafe environment, but it's not a very welcoming environment, and it's not very service-oriented for the entire community as they come and visit us. So one of the features of the remodel will not only be to address the accommodations of people with mobility concerns, but it'll be to maintain the entire building within the police department. So dispatch, our communications division, will transfer into the new emergency operations center and emergency communications center that will be built up on the northeast side of town. But it will also involve moving municipal court to their own building away from the police department, a very short distance, literally right across the parking lot. And so it will allow us to restore more square footage and space to our structure. Part of the space that we have addressed and run into, the limitations that have had to create some creative solutions. And so one of those is the building that's out here. This stem, this part that's out, it kind of blends in with the rest of our structure, but that's actually a double or triple wide trailer that has been joined to the side of the building for several years to allow for additional office space and additional work areas for the employees trying to serve the community. As part of that remodel project, when court moves to their new structure, that added expansion would go away and the building would be returned back to its original size and be bricked back in. Okay, so now we're inside the police department, inside the lobby. So the lobby is our entrance point to the public. This is where people come and visit us in order to get information to us and from us. So a lot of folks come up in here to interact with our records clerks. Records is responsible for gaining or providing all kinds of information, copies of reports, releasing impounds, helping their families and friends be bonded out after hours if they're arrested for a minor municipal offense. And so they're really the front-facing customer service side of the department. Some of the issues we have in this space are not only limited to the acoustics. It gets very loud in here. So you can imagine a game night when we have 20 and 30 people in here trying to get their cars out. It gets very loud and very crowded very quickly. Part of our issues we talked about outside were the ADA and the accessible aspects, and that really doesn't exist in here. So our employees do a great job working with the public and coming out to serve them, but there is no accessible counter, there's no accessible place to pull up to, and that creates some concern and some added barriers for people who are visiting our facility. One of the other issues we have is that we don't have a great place to discuss discuss problems and concerns with people when they come visit us. There are people who have concerns at their houses and or are visitors, and they come to the police department to report them and to talk to us. So one of the additional problems that we have and concerns with this space is that when people come to us, whether they're visitors or guests or residents of the city, they come to us to make reports, to talk to us about their concerns and their problems that are occurring, and just to get information and meet with an officer. And there's no real great way to do that. So what we end up having is people out here in the lobby. As you can tell, we have little portable desks set up, and we do some of that out here if possible. It provides a more open space, and we'll visit our only alternate option here in a little while. The second part of this is when we deal with municipal court. So one of the balances we have, which is difficult for some people, is when they come to municipal court in order to adjudicate their cases and to visit with the judges and or even just pay fines, they actually come to the police department. So they come through the police department and visit with us here in order to get to municipal court. So it's a little bit confusing with them, but it creates barriers and obstacles for people as well who are concerned about having to do that. Separating those branches of government, separating those processes is an important part of the step, and people do have expressed concerns with that, as well as our access to resources. One of those being the restrooms. We have two very outdated, smaller restrooms for the public. They're not only visited by people around the clock who visit our facility and municipal court, but they are frequently used by kids and families who are using Andrews Park. So they come over here, not only because it's air conditioned and it's a little bit nicer. There's not a lot of facilities over there, but more importantly in the winter, they're turned off because the water lines would freeze. So ours are not. Ours don't freeze so far. And so they will come over here and use our facilities. So it's just not nearly as accessible to the community. A remodel of our facility will help with a lot of addressing those issues and providing resources to continue to better serve our community and help our employees do their job. All right, so this is Russ Anderson. He's our communications manager. As we talked about earlier, part of our building is a shared space with dispatch. We're going to go downstairs and let him talk about dispatch a little bit.
Let's show you what we're working with. All right, so this is the current City of Norman Emergency Communications Center. There are 6 stations. Sometimes we'll have 6 people on at one time. That makes it extremely complicated when we're trying to train somebody. The space is extremely limited.
So we talked about a little bit about this upstairs, and Russ wasn't with us, but dispatch not only takes all of the phone calls from 911, they take all of the non-emergency phone calls, and after hours they take all of the City of Norman phone calls. So you all average about how many calls a day?
971 calls per day. We also handle all fire and EMS calls in the Little Axe area. That's the area east of 180th and the area west of 72nd.
So some of the issues we have and concerns down here, obviously you can tell that this is not a terribly active day. I'm not going to say the busy word because that would cause us problems, but it's not terribly active right now, and you can tell already they still stay very busy dealing with all these different radios and all the different phones and technologies they have to work with. There's no real functional space to expand, which creates problems for training, of course. We don't even have enough stations to house enough employees, so we are almost continually asking for new employees. But as we get them, there's nowhere to put them. This is still operated 24/7, as you can tell and probably hear a little bit. Even with just a few calls coming in, it does get very loud. It becomes very complicated. A couple of these ladies and or gentlemen will be on the radio for the police department. We may have 2 or 3 of them talking to different officers and different scenes that are going on, as well as the fire department or even Little Axe Fire Department, as well as MSTAT and animal welfare all at the same time. So all of those things occurring becomes very complicated when you're trying to pass information effectively between each other. It gets very loud, it gets very crowded.
It also poses some public safety issues when you've got 2 dispatchers on police radio. That takes the call taker duties to fire and EMS radio. So that dispatcher may be the same person call taking and teaching CPR at the same time.
And that is something that I don't think people realize, the activity that occurs with the dispatchers. They're not just call takers. They don't just pass the information on to us in the field. they're not only our lifeline with making sure that we have the help and the resources we need, but they're passing a ton of information on to the field, as well as ensuring that they're providing information to the public. They're giving people direction all the time of what to do and what not to do, providing medical information, trying to guide them. A single crash on the highway may result in 100, 200 calls in a 5-minute span.
A fire especially.
Yeah, I mean, if you end up in a significant or a high-profile incident, it becomes very problematic. We talked about upstairs a little bit with the emergency operations side of the house. Dispatch doesn't change. When the tornado sirens go off, a lot of people pick up the phone and call 911, a huge number of them. And so that overwhelms the resources down here as well and creates significant issues with that system and that process. Not only that, with the added technology over the years, there's nowhere for them to add anymore. When I started, I think there were 2 or 3 computer screens. 2
monitors, yeah. Now we're up to 8
per terminal. There's nowhere really to gain anymore. So that technology is going to continue. I don't know how they keep up with them now, but that will continue to take more landscape. They don't have that available. They also can't leverage anything from a data display from a security standpoint. They have
additional camera views.
One ability to see cameras. We have radio sites all over the city in different city complexes that we're responsible for watching overnight. You can't do that without being able to display that properly, much less putting up maps. We rely a lot on the technology. Sometimes it doesn't work. So we have to go back to using maps and using pens and paper and things of that nature, which is fine, but there's no real space and functional process to do that very efficiently. What are we missing down here?
20 years of use. The consoles are broken. They no longer raise. Keeps dispatchers sitting in their seats for up to 12 hours a day.
We did talk outside in the break area and the ability to get them out of what I refer to as their dungeon.
And decompress.
Getting them out of here. They go through a stressful call. They're talking a family through giving CPR to a small child and pulling somebody out of a pool or something of that nature. And they take on that stress. They take on that burden, and getting them out of here not only helps them as employees, but it helps them significantly in taking the next call. They can deal with the exact same issues that we deal with on the street. You never know what that next call is going to be. And right now there's nowhere for them to go, and to get out of that new facility especially will help with that. Just adding windows in is a huge help, giving them a little space to get up and walk around within the comm center, and being able to decompress and be able to ready to take on the next challenge is a big struggle that we currently really can't match. So this is the inside of the police department. This is the secure portion that we talk about. There's kind of 2 halves. We have just over 240 employees within the department. Almost 40 of them are civilians that are in the building every day, working on different things and doing different parts around the clock. Part of that is dispatch. So we have 2 options to get into dispatch. I think you all have already been down there and seen some of the options it provides. While it does get them underground to an extent, it comes with its own hazards and concerns, especially since we're right next to a railroad track. We do have some flooding events and things like that occur occasionally that are problematic. This is really our patrol type area. So you'll notice that several of our office spaces and other areas within the building have literally been converted out of old interview rooms and closets. As we continue to grow, we have run out of space to place people, especially our supervisors. And while a lot of these supervisors are out in the field doing a lot of their work out there, they still have employees, they still have counselings and trainings and other discussions that need to happen. And as you can tell, we get into very, very tight situations. Most of them have 2, if not 3 people housed in them every day. We, again, being a 24-hour operation department, it's fairly easy to be able to separate those. But it does conflict. We overlap our shifts to help with ensuring that we have officers on the street all the time. So there are times when supervisors don't have an office, which again, we work with. They have a computer in their car, but it makes it difficult. The remodeling of the building will allow for more of that space and just more effective use of our space as well. The briefing room is used for a multi-purpose kind of aspect. This is not only where our officers all start their days during non-COVID times. Right now we don't do that to allow them some space to not be in the same room at the same time to limit our exposures. But we bring everybody in before their shift. They're given the updates and the information they need to get going for that day, any events that are occurring, any special assignments. They get their equipment necessary, whether it's their cameras or their electronic ticket writers, things of that nature. They check out their cars and then they leave. When that's not used, this office is actually our larger conference room. We redesign it and put it together. I'll show you our conference room in a little while, but we can't have most of our command staff meetings. We don't have enough room for them. So we will combine this room for that. We also do several community events. PSST committee, I think, regularly meets here. those type things and functions. This really becomes a very versatile multi-purpose space. So what happens is if we have a critical incident and we need to set up an incident command type atmosphere, this is usually where we end up. The posters and things come off the wall, maps go up, other materials we rearrange it as best necessary, and we go forward. While it functions and it serves the purpose as we have it, it does not allow us to leverage any of that technology, take advantage of any digital information, being able to display things, share information effectively with dispatch. We can't run a dispatcher out of here very well. We do it, we make it happen. It's not very efficient or functional, and it gives us only the option of really being here. So what we end up doing is if we don't stay here, we have to go to a partner agency and use their facility. They are very welcoming. We have a lot of great relationships with our neighbor agencies, but then we're invading on their space. And a lot of times we have incidents that are large enough and wide enough scale that they're also impacted. So you can imagine we get a lot of people in here very quick. It gets very loud. It gets very redundant, and we just don't have any real functional way to make it any better in our current environment. So around the edges, you can see there's supervisor offices. This originally was our investigations bureau, and we've outgrown that significantly. There were a bunch of cubicles in here, and then they ran through all their investigations in here. That function is now housed at the investigation center along with the fire department. So this will still function as a briefing room. However, it would provide more functional access into the lobby, which would allow us to get guests in and out of the building in a more secure and more expedient fashion. Right now they have to come through the main department to get here. It also would relocate some of the supervisor offices into a more functional area so that when we are having meetings and events and things here, their offices are now adjacent to the space, so they're in and out all the time. It's usually not a huge issue, but again, it's one of those more efficiency things we've outgrown and would allow those spaces to become storage as well. So this is our records section. As we talked about out front, records is responsible for greeting all of our customers and our visitors around the clock, helping people out and getting information, access to their information, bonding people out of jail on municipal charges, as well as getting vehicles released when they're impounded, to get them unimpounded. I'm gonna make up a word there, I'm pretty sure. So as you can tell, we get a little bit cramped in space in here. We actually run multiple shifts in this space. Everybody shares a workstation as we move forward the day. Same issues we've talked about with dispatch in other areas. We have no room to grow. We have no ability to expand further, and even in times like right now, when we have shifts split apart, we have people working a whole bunch of different disparate shifts in different locations right now, we still stay fairly crowded in here. So there's no room for growth. The noise becomes an issue from time to time, and the ability to provide that service to the public becomes a concern. This space would be totally re-renovated, and the records function probably will move over to municipal court because municipal court had been fairly recently remodeled when they added on the portable buildings on the front. So this would then become repurposed for a whole different function.
Excellent. And that's part of municipal court becoming a court of record, right?
Correct, because municipal court would move, when they separate from our building, I believe part of that discussion has been making them a court of record, which is a significant benefit to sharing that information among other systems and court networks and addressing concerns that we have within the community. So one of the additional things as time has grown and we have grown is our workforce has changed, and especially when we deal with the ratio of male and female employees. We have a significant number of female employees, both officers and civilians, that work with us every single day. And what we haven't been able to do is keep up with some of those facilities. So our locker rooms for both sides of the house are obviously very outdated. They don't provide enough space and storage for officers to store equipment in them and to leave their uniforms and duty belts and things here. So some of this would be addressed through the remodel. What it would also functionally help with in significant fashion is the amount of restrooms we have available. For the men, we generally have enough restrooms. For the females, we do not. And so this is one of the locker rooms. We've already cleared it to make sure nobody's in here. But this is the female locker room. This is one of 2 restrooms we have in this facility for our females, which when you have enough in a certain space, of course, it is not real functional to have to use the restroom, need to use the restroom, and have to wait for somebody else. These are showers that were installed. They still do function. We do not use them currently. So part of this is that repurposing of these spaces and allowing our employees to have the necessary functions taken care of that we struggle with greatly right now.
So you have the one toilet for a staff of how many women?
We have one here, and we have one in the other hallway, and I believe in our building, I can get you the exact number, but it's probably around 30 to 40 at a time. And there's one downstairs for dispatch, if it's working. But being below ground, as you can imagine with plumbing in older buildings, things come on and off from time to time. So we have 3 in our building. When we have citizens come in and want to make reports, and they are especially of more private or sensitive nature, as you can imagine, we have people who come in to make reports for anything and everything from a sexual assault to a mental health concern, problems with their children and things of that nature that we're trying to help them out with. This is our only space we have to currently bring them back in order to have those discussions. And as you can tell, it's very, very small and very cramped. This creates a couple of different problems. One is we only have one. More importantly, what ends up happening is if they come with anybody, as you can tell, it's not a very open environment. It places people very close to each other, which is not a very open environment for people to talk about things that are very concerning. And based on the space, should we have, and it's happened before, where we have people that are in here who get agitated, we have to take some sort of enforcement action. It's not a real safe environment to allow that to occur, not only for our employees, but for them. There's just no real good alternative we have. We make the best we can right now, but the remodel will give us more, multiple locations, but also in a better setup and a better environment, not only for them, but for our employees as well. So in early 1980s, when this building was built, times were different, things were different, and the needs were different. So currently we don't house any inmates or prisoners in our facility, other than if we're here talking to them, doing interviews, things of that nature. In the early 80s, that wasn't the case, and we actually had jail cells here. So these are the original jail cells. They are still here today. Obviously, we cannot use them and do not use them to house people, but we do use them for storage. Part of the problem we have with our building is that as things like this have become outdated and or not used, they're not functional for anything now other than storing stuff, such as that one where we store all of our little teddy bears that we give out to kiddos on crashes and domestics and things of that nature. So part of the purpose of the remodel would be to repurpose some of the space that we have really outgrown. The jail cell area and our former property custody area is probably the 2 biggest impacts of that. The property custody thing is right here next to it, and we struggle in this area for 2 reasons. One is the location of it in the building, but the other part is that the former property custody area, which has moved to the investigation center now, has a large vault in it, which by the nature of the property that we have to store makes sense, but it's not functional for anything else other than storage. All of the stuff that's stored in here now are radio parts. So while it looks like a discombobulated mess, it's their organized fashion of all of our pieces and things that make our radios work. This would all transfer over to the Emergency Operations and Emergency Communications Center, along with all of our radio systems. And so what that does is frees up a lot of space, but that space has to be remodeled and reallocated to make it functional, which obviously a jail cell and or a former vault is just not the most functional space for an office, even though I've been told that I should belong in them occasionally. It is just not real options. We can't add infrastructure into those spaces. Heat and air is very limited, of course. Putting computer or technologies, phones in those spaces just isn't realistic. So having to remove those and repurpose these spaces is a significant part of the remodel process. So as we've continued to grow throughout the years, office space is one of the things that we've had to accommodate for. So most of our supervisors, especially our command and executive staff, have their own offices. Not everybody, and they don't because of that we just don't have space for them. So this is our former lab. It now houses 5 different functions that are in one space. We refer to it as the hallway. It works very well for what we do, but there's a lot of discussions and activities that need to occur amongst those staff that we don't have space for. We literally have run out of cubicles and places to put people. So as you can see in what used to be the hall, we now have put desks up against the wall and made it work. Some of these roles back in here, including all of our planning and logistics functions, our policy and administration area, and all of our redaction work occurs back in these spaces, as well as all of our investigations for our critical injury and fatality crashes all occurs in here. And we've done our best to keep up with that. But being able to repurpose these spaces, update them, bring the technology in here that is necessary to allow them more efficient working space will be part of that remodeling process. So one of the other things that we struggle with our building is as things have occurred over the years, be they storms or different adjustments to the campus, have been related to security of our equipment and of our employees. So we have no secured parking for our employees right now. We have no safe place to put our vehicles and our equipment. They're open 24/7 and exposed to anything and everything. And that includes not only department vehicles, but personal vehicles, which we do from time to time have problems with. People will come in and slash tires or do something of that nature. A lot of it comes into storing our equipment and securing it. Part of this also is a customer service side, in that we have people get very confused. Our building is rotated in, the front is into the city complex. A lot of people believe the back of the building is the front of the building. It's not uncommon at all that we have people come into the back of our lots trying to gain access to municipal court, to records, to find help. More than willing to help them, but it causes them confusion. It really causes them confusion if they find a door that's open or not secured. And our civilian staff, especially coming in and out at all times of the night, are encountering people sometimes who are not so friendly and not so sober. We have had lethal force situations back here with people who unfortunately were intending on being harmed and have walked in. There's a lot of areas in our back lot that creates potential ambush points and concerns that we have seen not only across the country, but in our facility as well. So part of this ongoing process is putting up fencing, putting up security gating so we can somewhat control that access and not only provide more security for our equipment and our people, but also provide better direction to our visitors to go to the front of the building where they can actually be helped in a more readily available fashion. So some of that involves this lot as well as a lot to our south. It also includes some of our break area and things of that nature. And as you can tell, we not only have run out of enough area that we have storage sheds we store our stuff in, which is kind of the nature of being out of space, but it creates more complications when we talk about the security of our structure and our employees.
For more information, visit gonorman2020.com.